for joining us. If you can continue to keep yourselves on mute and the video off, that would be very much appreciated. Welcome to our landscape memo training. I'm Apollo Pazell. I do campaigns for the National Party headquarters, and was lucky enough to work with candidates across the country, including Marshall Burt, who is being sworn in. I'm currently actually in a hotel room in Green River, Wyoming, getting on our way to the swearing in for Representative Burt, Elect Burt. Yes, everyone is muted. Okay, we're going to go dive right in because it's about a 45-minute training. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about what we're going to be learning. So we're going to be covering landscape memos and pre-campaign work. Okay, so before you get involved in a campaign, there's some key information that you need to know before you make a decision to run, what office to run for, and before you write your campaign plan. So a lot of people, I apologize, I'm also admitting people at the same time, so I might get distracted. But a lot of people contact me on a daily basis to talk about their campaigns. And the first question that I'm going to ask anybody who contacts me is, what's your win number? Next, a close follow-up is, what's your Persuasion Universe, which less people know, but you need to know your win number at very least. And as I've been talking to people, it became clear that we are not doing enough work on our win number, or our landscape memos, our win numbers, and our pre-campaign work. So I decided to, Kara and I decided to put on this training so that we can go ahead and try to get as many libertarian candidates information on how to get your landscape memo started as quickly as we could. So that we can all have successful campaigns. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to need to collect the resources necessary. And a lot of this information might seem remedial to you, but it's a good reminder. So some areas that you can, all right, we have a lot of folks still joining. I apologize. So the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need a voter file. So I guess the first thing you need to know is what race that you want to run for and where to find your voter file. Okay, so if you're running for a city council race, which is likely going to be the races that you're going to be running in 2021, the most likely location that you can get your voter file with accurate, up-to-date data is your county clerk's office. If you're in certain states, I think there's about 7 states that the county clerks don't actually collect that data. You can go through your Secretary of State's office or the equivalent office in Utah. That's the Lieutenant Governor's office. Once you have your information, you're going to want to work on a breakdown. And I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to share a sample memo. This is a Republican memo. Let me find it and then I will share it. Oops. I have quite a few things open, so it is not in the immediate option. Anyway, give it a shot. See if I can share it now. Okay, we're going to go ahead and work on sharing the landscape memo. You're going to want to break this down into demographics. Okay, so the most important thing that you're going to want to know is not just how many voters you have, but also who those voters are. Once you have your voter file, you're going to want to take a look at previous election cycles. Okay, so this is determining what they call your persuasion universe, or your the likely voters. Okay, so a likely voter is somebody who turns out for every election cycle. Now we're approaching an off-year election. So this is going to be the lowest turnout numbers, which is of course obvious information. But what you're going to do is, after you have your voter file, you're going to compare the total number of voters to previous voter turnouts in similar races. Now what that means is you're going to take all of the races in the last 10 years. You might need to do some research on that if you're running for a municipal office. It might be hard to track down that information, but it is critical. So go to previous newspapers, go to previous council members, whatever you need to do to collect as much data on previous races as possible. Now, you're going to want to eliminate anomalous campaigns. So for instance, a presidential year is going to have a far greater a far greater turnout than a municipal or a midterm election, and even more so an off-year election is going to have even less than that. So you're going to need to collect all that information and then identify the anomalous years. If you have the same number of people turn out in an off year as they do in a presidential year, then you can count those years. If you do not have the same number of voters turn out in a presidential year as an off year, you're going to only want to take your off. Teaching you how to calculate a win number right now, and I will also put it in the chat. The formula is pretty easy, but you're going to take the average of the last 3 non-anomalous election cycles. You're going to take the total number of votes, the total number of voters who turned out in that election cycle, and you're going to average that out. And then you're going to divide that. Well, you're going to multiply it by 0.50, but you're going to divide it by 50, or you're going to get 50% of that plus 1. Now that's a basic win number. Most consultants in the field will tell you that you should not go with a basic field or a basic win number. You should add 1 to 4% to your win number so that you have a nice cushion. Okay, so you take the average of the last 3 non-anomalous, non-anomalous election cycles. You average them out, multiply them by 50% or 51 to 54%, and that will give you your win number. Okay, now the win number means everything for your campaign. Everything that you do in your campaign from this point on, from building your coalition, deciding exactly how you're going to message, everything that you do is will be decided based off of your win number. And now I'm going to try again to get the sample pulled up now that I've closed a lot of tabs. Let's hope that this one works now. Bear with me for one moment, I'm sorry. There you go. Excellent. We have it now. Okay. So what I'm showing you, and it should be popping up here any moment now, is it's for Salt Lake County, which is my home county, which is why I feel so comfortable being able to explain it to you guys. Just still not coming up. There we go. Okay, so once you have your information collected, you're going to want to put the information to something like this. Identify your large municipal areas, identify your population centers, and then break down those population centers by party. But here's your municipality. So you're going to want to break it up by municipality. So in Salt Lake County, here is the list of populous counties. You're going to want to, or cities. You're going to want to find out where the population centers are in your district, and you're going to want to know where they vote. So as you can see, we have our blue cities, and you have your red cities, and you have your gray cities, which are between, which are close enough. They're below in this particular model. They are under a certain percentage of swing voters or unaffiliated voters. So this is based off of partisan affiliation. So as you can see, South Jordan here is the most conservative area in the state of, or in the county of Salt Lake County. And then the most liberal area here is going to be either Salt Lake or, that is surprising to me, or that. Okay, all right, well, I'm not going to say that because I don't believe that's correct. Then you're going to want to also break out your voter registration by municipality as well, by partisan level. So this is what we've done here, is we've identified the number of Republicans, the number of Democrats, the number of unaffiliateds, all the way down, and then these are third parties as well. You're going to want to identify all of this so that you can start building your consensus. So if you have 100 voters, I'm just going to go ahead and round it out like that. If you have 100 voters and 40 of them are Republicans and 30 of them are Democrats and the rest of them are unaffiliated, you need to try to identify how many or what percentage of each of these groups you need to collect to be able to get to your win number. That will decide your messaging strategy. It will decide your field strategy. It will decide whether you're using phone banking or if you're going to be using more mailers. So this information will be utilized by whatever consultant that you're able to work with or by yourself to be able to identify that. The next piece you're going to want to do in your landscape memo is identify which areas, and if you're in a small area, which most of you are going to be doing one cities, this is precinct. All of you have wards or precincts. And you should be breaking this down by precinct if you don't have by municipality. Okay, so you're going to want to identify the precincts and where the people are in those precincts. So if there's a number of Democrats on, College Hill, if it's mostly Democratic, and then you have, down by the railroad, you have mostly Republican voters. I'm making a city up here. You're going to want to break that up so that you can develop a field strategy. This is all information that you're going to be receiving from your voter file. Now, this is for a Republican race, so you're going to want to look at the most libertarian municipalities or precincts by registration. That's more important for larger races or for the old parties than it is for the minor parties, the third parties. But it is important for you to be aware of exactly what your breakdown is so that you can identify correct messaging. Because, for instance, there was a state house race from a libertarian who was running in a two-way race in a very blue state. It was a special election that had a lot of attention and a lot of opportunity, but instead, so the district is what they call a plus 19% Democratic district. And had he been able to do what he needed to do to parse it out and understand that, he would have had messaging that was more attuned to, or more in tune to the voters of his district. Instead, in a plus 19% Democratic district, our candidate ran a pro-gun campaign. Now, I'm not telling you to lie about your positions, but I am saying tailor your campaign to whatever the voters want. Voters drive your messaging, you don't drive the messaging. So this is the information that you need to know to be able to communicate effectively with your voters, because it's not that they don't agree with you, it's that they don't care about the same issues, and this is how you find that out. So finding the most Republican, most Democratic, most third party. Then you're going to want to, once you've identified all of this information, you can go ahead and plug that into your messaging strategy. The next thing that you're going to want to do is identifying your persuasion universe. Now, I can tell you right now, as libertarians, your persuasion universe is going to be tremendously higher than a typical persuasion universe. Now, many of you will be running in nonpartisan races, which means that your persuasion universe is a little bit more difficult to calculate, but I'll go ahead and explain how to do that. So a persuasion universe is how many voters you need to be able to move from your lowest level, which is your base, and right now the libertarian base is anywhere between 1.5 and 3%, to the percentage you need to be able to win, whether it's plurality or whether it's majority. Okay, so that's your persuasion universe. So again, if we have 100 voters and your base is 15, let's say, then for you to be able to get to in a three-way race, for you to be able to get to 33% plus one, you're going to need to find a way to build a coalition to get 16 more voters. Okay, so that's your persuasion universe. So your persuasion universe is 16 voters, which in an election of a constituency of 100 people would be a 16% persuasion universe. Okay, so you're identifying your persuasion universe by these numbers as well. And that will tell you your budget. So what is the purpose of a persuasion universe? It lets you know what you can spend so that you can start preparing for your fundraising and your expenditures. How many mailers are you going to send out? How much is it going to cost? That's what the persuasion universe teaches you. Now, this also opens the door, and this allows libertarians and other third parties to understand why it is more difficult and less cost effective for libertarians to run for office. And that's because our persuasion universes are significantly higher than the Republicans and Democrats, whose persuasion universes typically are closer to 7 to 10%, whereas libertarians are closer to 40% for their persuasion universes. Let me check and see if there are any questions here that I might be able to answer. I move quickly. Okay, I'm going to admit some more people too. All right, so once you have identified your persuasion universe and your win number, you need to start identifying your or laying out your landscape memo. And the landscape memo is identifying key factors about your race. Okay, so you're going to break your key factors, or you're going to break your your characteristics of your race into 3 categories. It's the district, the election, and the candidates. Okay, so this is the opposition research. Some people are into the opposition research stuff, but the things you need to know before you are able to put together your campaign plan. Let's start with the district. You need to have a map. You can get maps from multiple locations. Usually your county clerk will have it. You can also go to nationalatlas.gov. That has some they're pretty Spartan, but they're pretty accurate maps on districts that are kept up pretty well. So you're going to want to know the physical boundaries. You're going to want to print off a map and make sure that you understand the physical boundaries. And again, I understand that a lot of this might seem remedial to some of you guys, but it is critical for you to be able to develop a campaign plan. Major population centers. Many of you are going to be running in municipal races, but many municipal races have pretty strong outlying areas, so you need to identify your precincts in those cases. Major media outlets. This is called a firewall, which I'm hoping to get to at the end of this, which is why I'm moving a little bit more quickly. So you need to know every single major media outlet and every reporter who covers that race. You need to have it in a readily accessible file. You need demographic information. You can go to the US Census for that. And you need to break it down by gender, religion, race. You need to know exactly what the voters in your district, what their culture is, what they look like, and just understand who the people are that you're speaking to in order to put together an effective message. So population, race, age, income, religious affiliation, education levels. These are all important factors. The more you can get out of it, the better, so that you can more effectively target your races. You're going to want to know registration numbers, which we already talked about. Then the next thing you're going to want to do, this is important to our numbers here, is turnout. Okay, so if there are, again, let's go back to our 100-person district. Let's say 50% are Democrats. There are 50 Democrats, or 50 Democrats in this 100-person district. And only 20 of them show up. Only 20% of the electorate shows up that are that would be even smaller. Only 10% of Democrats show up in the election. That's an important thing to know, because you need to, that will inform your strategy on whether you're going to be more GOTV or whether you're going to be more persuasion. There are different types of campaigns, issue-based campaigns versus electoral campaigns, which we can get to at a different time. But you need to know the turnout for per party, per gender, per religious organization, so you know exactly. I'm sorry, I'm letting more people in. Yes, I can list the factors slower. I apologize. The demographic, I'm assuming you mean the demographic factors. You're going to want population, you're going to want race, gender, age, income, housing, education levels, employment. Let me see. And please, everybody, turn off your speakers and videos as you join. I hope that was easier. I apologize. So again, physical boundaries, major population centers, media outlets, demographic information, registration numbers and turnout, and then money raised in the last similar election. So again, you need to do this from a non-anomalous non-anomalous races. Okay, so you look back at previous races and you identify the ones that are non-anomalous and find out how much people raised in order to win. Now, something that the Libertarian Party in the past, I've been here for a while, has focused less on is we always want to try to do this at a grassroots level. And while that's admirable, the reality is in politics is that money talks. Average out. You need to average out what it cost to run those successful races. The next factors that you're going to want to place in your landscape memo is regarding the election. Okay, so are you running as part of a slate? Now, many libertarians do run as a slate. So do you have somebody running for Senate, somebody running for House, somebody running for governor, somebody running for county commissioner? And how will that impact your resources? Will there be more resources, less? Will it increase apathy? What are the impacts that will have on your election? How will organizing at the top of the ticket impact your race? Now, the top of the ticket in your municipal races, in I think all but a few states, is going to be you're going to be the top. Maybe a county official might be above you. So that's not really something you're going to need to worry about too much. Talk or think about potential candidates. Now we can go ahead and talk, we can move down to this. So in this particular race, there were 3 potential candidates. It ended up being Mayor Wilson and Mayor Staggs, who ended up running against each other in this particular race. And you're going to want to identify likely candidates, candidates who are already in office, people who are running for re-election. Identify any person who might possibly get into the race on any side of the aisle. And then once you do that, we'll go ahead and get into the candidates piece of this later. Are there any initiatives on the ballot? That's a huge one. So initiatives, especially high interest initiatives. So I'm going to use Utah as an example because I'm most familiar with it. In 2018, there was an initiative to legalize medical cannabis that passed. And in that election, we got to see the high watermark of Democrats. They were able to get more people elected in the state of Utah than they ever have before, and Salt Lake County became more of a blue area because there was such a strong registration and such interest. So initiatives matter a lot, and many states and many municipalities allow for initiatives on off-year elections. So make sure that you have a complete list of all initiatives that might have an impact, and then how they might impact it. Is it an initiative to allow constitutional carry? Is it an initiative to legalize marijuana or psilocybins? These will have impacts on voter turnout, and that will have a further impact on your race. And in some cases, it might mean that you need to sit it out that time because you don't want to get a loss on your record that will be caused by an initiative. So initiatives are very important. What resources can you expect from your party? Now, we have some parties that are very effective and have more resources than others, state parties, and you need to know if you're going to be receiving any resources from them so that you can include that in your budget. So contact your state officials, contact your county officials, and find out exactly how much money that you're going to be bringing in from them, what resources you can count on them so that you can reach your average when you're doing your fundraising, or so you know how much left to reach your average when you're fundraising. The other thing you're going to want to do is I'm I am trying to answer questions as I go, but I keep losing the messages. The factors that differentiate your election from another election. Did the candidate that you're seeking to replace retire? Did the candidate you're seeking to replace die? Were they impeached? Was there some sort of a scandal? Is the family of the founders of the town? These are all factors that differentiate your race from others. Is it a ranked choice voting system? Many municipalities have adopted a ranked choice voting. These are all things that you need to include in your memo. The meeting will end in 10 minutes. Okay, I'm hurrying up. Okay, what are the major local issues? You need to identify the local issues. And what are the major national issues? Now let's move on to candidates, because this is an important piece. Every candidate in the race needs to have a dossier. Every candidate that is running against you, every candidate that is in a primary, every candidate that's running in parallel races. If you're running for Ward 1 and they're running for Ward 3, you need to have a dossier on every single candidate in the race. And what I mean by that is you need to know their employment, their religious, I'll say it slowly, their employment and their religious affiliation, any community involvement that they have, membership associations, and if they're current on their dues, business interests and business partnerships, any past political offices that they hold, existing social media networks. I would like for you to take screen captures, go back into their history as far as you possibly can, to identify any areas in which they have deviated from their positions. And then you need to do the same thing for all of their close family members. And I know that sometimes that feels dirty, but it's really important for you to be able to do that. So now I'm going to repeat here just one more time because it's the most critical thing. When somebody calls me, the number one thing I need to know is how big is your race? How expensive is your race? So again, I want to just go over the win number one more time. The win number is the average of 3 non-anomalous elections. What is an anomalous election? A presidential year versus an off year. The presidential year is going to be anomalous. Leave. Stop that. Thank you. You're going to want to eliminate those, average it out, multiply it by 51 to 54%, depending on how big of a cushion that you want. And that is your win number. Okay. And I average out 3 to 5. I never go much further than that. So when you're going back in your non-anomalous elections, I do 3 to 5 elections. I don't go much further than that. The second thing is your persuasion universe, identifying the base, going through those non-anomalous elections and identifying how much libertarians or similar candidates to you, how much they receive as their base, and then what percentage you need to be able to get to the win number. And I think we'll go ahead and open it to questions if we can. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can answer questions that you guys might have. So for state house race, do I get my voter file from the county clerk or the state? It depends on your state. I usually go through the county clerk's office because the county clerk's office tends to have the most up-to-date information. County clerks are sometimes only required to update once a year, sometimes only required to update every other or twice a year, while the Secretary of State tends to require that that all information, all data be exported to the Secretary of State's office automatically. Why not use 1% over the largest normal turnout? It's to give you a cushion. So, when you're planning your budget, the reality is that there will be unforeseen circumstances that change the nature of the election. So if you have somebody that decides to attack you, if somebody decides to go negative, that will change the dynamics of the race. So you want to give yourself a cushion so that you can get more or change your coalitions up, change things a little bit. So you need to constantly be communicating with the correct number of people for that. A reasonable number to pay campaign staff depends on the campaign. If you're running a municipal race of less than 2,000 people or anything like that, it's probably likely that all you'll have to do is run it yourself and maybe get one volunteer member. If you're running much larger than that, then you should be aiming for something higher. Now, a goal that I'm trying to tell everybody at all levels is that I would like for them to, if they are under 10,000 people, I would like for them to raise at least 5,000, or I'm sorry, at 10,000. And if they are over that, then they have to have at least 10. Something that Carol wanted me to make sure that I push before this ends, and I agree with her completely on this, is that we definitely need to have, you need to have your photographs taken. Okay, so something that happens to Kara and I a lot is that candidates will approach us and say that they're ready to start their campaign, they have everything running, they have bank accounts, they've announced, they have their social media up, but they've never had professional photographs. Spend the money for professional photographs, it matters a lot. Vote totals by precinct, it depends on the race. It's very, very challenging, say in Wyoming or Montana, to get actual votes by precinct. It's actually very, very challenging. But in some states, it's very easy. Utah keeps very, very diligent records on that. So it really depends on your state. The constituent counts are identifying incumbents' voter registrations or population in their jurisdiction. Constituent counts are identifying incumbent voter registration. I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry. Do you recommend slates? Yes, I do recommend slates. When you are running with a slate, it reduces the cost overall, and you have more chances of success. Yes, I do think that you should run on slates when that is a possibility. List those factors again. I already did that one. Are there more? Yes, there were more people trying to join. Okay, if you have additional questions, please. Oh, there are new ones. How well does that translate to statewide race instead of a local? This is universal. Okay, so when you're doing a statewide, any of this information you need to gather before you do any race, whether it be statewide or national or whatever the case is. The only difference between a statewide race and a municipal race is the amount of time and information that you have to sort through in order to get this landscape memo. So I'm going to read you just a paragraph from a sample landscape memo just to give you an idea of what it should sound like. Okay, the 21st legislative district in the state of blank is open in 2014. The four-term Republican incumbent has announced her intention of running for the state Senate, leaving this district up for grabs in November. While the district has been represented by a Republican for the last 8 years, the Democratic prospects are good. The district is currently represented by a Democrat in the state Senate who's retiring this year. His chief of staff was the likely Democratic nominee in the race to fill the seat. And in 2012, when opportunity voted for, I don't know what that's supposed to mean, for Mitt Romney over Barack Obama, 54 to 46% in the district. The district vote was much closer, 50.4% to 48%. Democrats can win the 21st, but it will take an intense effort. The announcement that Representative blank is running for state senate is set off a scramble for the Republican side. So as you can see, it's really truly just a rundown of everything in the race, okay? And that is what you're going to want to present to anybody who's going to be assisting you with there. I'm going to get a copy of this class for review. Yes, we will be recording it. This is before your campaign plan. So Tricia asked, do you consider this in addition to or in lieu of your campaign plan? This is before your campaign plan, okay? So you do not want to put together a campaign plan until you have this information ready. Okay, so this is what you need to do before you draft your campaign plan. Do local or regional libertarian chapters contribute to statewide positions? Yes, they do. And do you consider this? Okay. So any other questions, please put them in the comments, but I basically covered that information. Now, the reason I brought this up again, and we only have about 2 minutes left, is because I've had a lot of candidates that have approached me, and I know that it seems like a waste of time, but trust me, when this gets down the line, if you're using your election tools, this will be essential. When are you done? Let's see, okay, Kara, I will go ahead and turn the host back over to you shortly. I'm just going to wrap up with this 30 seconds here. When you approach somebody, make sure that you have all of this information, and please plug all of this information into something that can be used for continuity. Something else that you're going to want to do is if somebody has run this race, a libertarian or a friend has run in this race before, it is important for you to ask them if they have data. Did they use a canvassing software? Did they keep records of all of these voters? So that you can come back and you can use the information that they collected to be able to more micro-target to your voters information that will convince them and persuade them. Now, before we run out of time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Kara. And thank you all very much, and we will try to do a second one.
Thank you very much, Apollo. I really appreciate this training. This was great. We always do record this and load this up onto the YouTube channel. Those of you who have filled out the Run for Office form on lp.org, you will receive a copy of this and links to our previous trainings. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining our training, and thank you very much, Apollo, for presenting this.
Thank you.